Hello everyone and welcome to another Topdeck video. My name is TrueDawn and today we're going to be going over some new decks that came up as a result of the new cards released in the most recent patch. The Arena patch gave us 10 new gold cards, some of which are very good, some of which are not. But for the ones that are incredibly strong, we will be talking about some shells I've put some of them into, and where you can go from there. All this is very baseline level 1 stuff. There's definitely room to grow, but it's a good thing to explore initially where we start from and then how we can build towards other stuff in the future. And the first one we're going to go over is Imlerith Sabbath. Imlerith Sabbath is an incredibly strong card that kind of wins the game by itself if it goes unchecked. I do like the design of it, and it is very fun to play with when it's not being oppressive, because it's one of the cards I think one should have more of, where you play it, it gets some amount of value, your opponent can respond, and if they do, it stops getting value. If they don't, it keeps getting value. Problem with Imlerith Sabbath right now is that if they don't respond to it, they lose the game. They just straight up lose. And that's obviously problematic. That's too punishing. I wish if there's a way they could potentially lower the ceiling on this card while still maintaining and preserving the gameplay pattern it fosters that is legitimately enjoyable, that would be optimal. I'm not exactly sure how you could do that. You'd have to somehow like make it so it doesn't heal so much, maybe only armor or healing, one or the other, stuff like that. Anyway, this deck is really strong when they do not answer this, and even when they do, this bronze base kind of holds its own, which I was surprised by. The Drakars with all of the Wild Hunt units are very strong. Wild Hunt Navigator ends up being worth a large number of points. So this deck is very good. And obviously you have Mandrake and Parasite to buff the Imlerith Sabbath if you get to untap with it, and making it an 11 if you have Mandrake, and then you can renew it. My particular build right here is built for maximum chance of seeing Imlerith and then being able to renew Imlerith. Obviously why we have Gales and Royal Decree. You don't need to go this all in. You could definitely sacrifice some consistency, have Imlerith be a thing that only comes online every once in a while, and play other golds, not be all in on this game plan. That's likely what's going to be the best iteration of an Imlerith deck later on, because you still have to keep your opponent honest with Imlerith. They still have to answer that, but you're doing other stuff. You don't just lose if they answer Imlerith. So this is just a level 1 deck. I had a lot of fun with it yesterday. Playing with Imlerith is really fun. Even like these Wild Hunt units are really fun. So I would recommend trying this out if you're interested in any of those monster units that don't involve eating stuff, and have fun. Next deck I want to talk about is a Skellige deck that I was messing around with yesterday. This deck is very centralized on leveraging tempo swings in a timely manner. We have Dandelion Poet, Skull, Roach, Heim, Wolfsbane, a lot of things that just give you pretty much free points on the board, free extra points that you can, when timed correctly, leverage into card advantage, especially alongside Udalryk. This deck is pretty, not very inconsistent, but it definitely has like sketchy mulligans because you have your Brand Pile, Roach. You want to keep all of your Berserker Marauders in play. So it could definitely get a little bit sketchy sometimes because you're trying to pull your Berserker Marauders with Skull. That's why it gets most of its power from. But when you are able to have everything like function, you don't brick, you just have these massive tempo swings with like Poet and Roach and Skull and Heim and all of this stuff to just boost when you need to and leverage that into card advantage. And the existence of Olgierd in your Brand Pile lets you lose for value and not have them cold pass on you, because Olgierd is like the most conventionally played carryover outside of Barbagazi. So there's a lot you can do in this deck to like just leverage tempo at certain points, which is where most of the gameplay in Gwent right now surrounds, deciding when to pass, playing tempo at opportune times to give you a profitable pass, etc. I think this deck has a lot of tools to do that, and if you think you're like better than average, you're probably gonna find a lot of spots to out leverage people with a deck like this. Also, golds, like you don't need Coral if you're scared of giant things, Neckers, what have you. Play it. If not, if you want something more proactive, you can certainly do that. This is non-essential personnel. Whatever gold you want to play here, you can play here. The next deck I want to talk about a little bit is Henselt. Now this is like a rudimentary build of Henselt. This is probably wrong. I actually forgot to put Dumb Banner in here. But the main thing is Triss Telekinesis. Triss Telekinesis is incredibly strong in this deck because you are guaranteed to always get a winch unless your opponent is running like 3 individual spells in their deck, which is uncommon. And even then you are heavily favored to still see the winch. And as anyone knows, like just winching a bunch in this deck is incredibly powerful. So I think Triss Telekinesis is going to be very strong just because of how you can modulate its strength with your own deck building. Like winch is obviously like one of the most obvious powerful things to do with it, but there's probably going to be other stuff, like maybe some other Spelltail decks, what have you, that are able to really leverage an additional spell that they already want. I think that this is going to be one of the better shells for it, certainly because you just want to have all of your dudes, you can shuffle them back, Henselt, or just like having additional machines is very good. So Telekinesis is likely going to show up in Henselt a lot from now on. It's definitely the obvious home for it, and I would expect to see this card do pretty well in that archetype. And then I didn't make a deck for this, but I do want to briefly talk about the meme horse, whose name is very weird that I forget. It is under neutral. This one. Not even trying to pronounce that. Not even trying. But this card alongside Stefan Skellen is obviously very strong because it immediately goes to 7. You put it on top of your deck with Stefan Skellen, goes to a 12, comes to play, damages back down to a 7, immediately triggers. So it gives you a very powerful, immediate impact play whenever you would need that. I know that Petrify was trying to work on some stuff like this yesterday when we thought that it did damage to a single target because of warding. But even outside of that, if you want to, you can still play this in earlier points in rounds, not as a finisher, to really just get a massive boost that you would not normally otherwise have access to. The question is just what shell you want to put that in. Unclear as of yet, but I think that the interaction between this and Stefan Skellen is very strong. And you could also try and high roll this with Aguara. This Aguara, because it boosts a random unit in your hand by 5. If you could try and high roll on the horse, little unlikely, but if you want to do that, go ahead. So there's a lot of new cards in this set that are interesting. I think Dandelion Poet is likely going to be the most powerful, but outside of Imlerith. But those are the two main ones. And it'll be cool to see what new shells people develop. Maybe you guys can use some of the stuff I showed you here as a springboard to make some cool stuff. I hope you do. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I will be back next week, same time on Thursday, for another Top Deck video, and I hope you guys will join me then. Have a good day, and keep watching Top Deck stuff.